Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Eugene. Hello, Zoom friends. I hope you're all finding a way to keep cool out there in this extraordinary heat that we're having, and we're glad you're here with us today. My name is David Bockoven. I use the pronouns he, him. I am a middle-aged white guy. I'm completely bald from alopecia, and I'm wearing my usual uniform of khakis and socks with sandals, my favorite. I am this morning's other worship associate. Before we begin, I do have three announcements. This afternoon at 3 here in this very building, Kara Eubanks, who graces us with her beautiful violin music from time to time last week, is giving a benefit concert here. Tickets are available on a sliding scale online, so please come to that. Don't miss the work parties on Saturday afternoon, July 13th, to help prepare our new tiny shelters that will be replacing our Conestoga huts. They're on that sort of the part of the property. Sign up using the Sign Up Genius app. And lastly, I would like to draw attention to the Creating Theology Together class that Rev Jen and Ryan will be co-facilitating starting a week from Sunday, July 14th at 2 p.m. on Sundays on Zoom and in person. It's a 12-week course starting with our own personal histories and beliefs and moving towards weaving together a theology of shared values and community. For our first-time visitors, thank you for joining us here today. Every service is a little bit different, so we hope you'll come back several times to get a sense of who we are and what we're about. For example, this morning's service is a lay-led service. Rev Jen has the day off, and it's conducted by Bob and I. I want to reassure you up front that we won't be lecturing too much at you on the history or theory of democracy. We do feel, however, that in discussing some aspects, perhaps inherent problems and constraints of democracy, that we can somehow show connections between our evolving UU traditions and the spark of spirituality underlying a community which practices democratic decision-making. Frankly, I don't know how much of a language of reverence for U.S. democracy I can actually muster this morning, if I'm being honest, given last week's Supreme Court decision. So our call to worship this morning is actually also a call to action. To quote Justice Sotomayor's dissent in the Trump v. United States case, "With fear for our democracy, I dissent." And I think we all dissent, or maybe most of us are dissent. Yes, I dissent. So though we ardently acknowledge and support the notion of the separation of church and state, it doesn't mean that we UUs are disengaged from political processes, especially given our history of engagement in the work of social justice. The US elections in November feel to many like a looming existential crisis for our basic democratic system and institutions of government. Yes, Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, I'm looking at you. Rather than despairing, we could view the situation as an opportunity to rethink how we do democracy in this country and how we approach decision-making in our lives in a wider sense. Some questions that relate more to our personal lives include, if you've had to live with the consequences of a decision-making process that seemed especially unfair or arbitrary, how did you cope with that? Did you do anything to challenge the decision? What makes a decision unfair? If you've been in a position of authority and had to make a decision that affected others, to what extent did you take their thoughts and feelings into account? And how did you do so? All the information you need to know about today's service can be found in our handy guide to Sunday worship. Check to see, I don't know, does anyone need one of those? Okay, if you do, I'll let someone know about that. And if you didn't get one, you can wave your hand and one of our greeters will bring one to you. And Zoom friends, our tech team will drop a copy of the order of service and a visitor form into the chat. After the service, please stay for coffee and socializing in the back of the hall. Our welcoming room is located in the south foyer. It's that beautiful glass enclosed building room over there. It's a place for both long-time and first-time people to meet and greet each other. If you are a visitor this morning or would simply like to learn more about Unitarian Universalism or our church in particular, please join us for the Inquirers program at 11:30 in that welcoming room. This is a drop-in program for those who would like to learn more about us. Our 4-week summer term starts today, and the topic is Modern Unitarian Universalism. Everyone is welcome to join us in the welcome room at 11:30. Even old-timers are welcome as well. And now, let us enter into a time of worship by lighting the flaming chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith.
So Grayson Wagner has graciously volunteered, or been voluntold, to light the chalice for us. As I share these words from Mark Morrison Reed, the central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each of us. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength is too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. And now let us say together the words of our mission, which affirm our shared purpose. We probably all know it. Here we go. Empowered by love, we transform ourselves and serve our world. Our settled minister has previously shared with us the loving kindness meditation. We also have hymn 1031 in the Teal hymnal, which is based on this Buddhist meditation. So this morning, I'd like to lead you in that tradition. So what we'll do is, after a few moments of silence, I'll give you a prompt to consider, to meditate on, and then we'll sing a verse of the hymn. The first verse is, "May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole." And then the second and fourth verses exchange I for you. And then the last verse replaces I with we. So let's do this together. Now, let's begin by putting your body in a comfortable position. And you can either close your eyes or soften your gaze. And take a few deep breaths. So in the loving kindness meditation, we begin by imagining seeing yourself in a mirror and considering yourself as we say the prayer, as we sing the prayer. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. Take another deep breath. And now in your mind's eye, consider those that you love, those that are dear to you. There's probably a few pets in that image. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. And now open that circle wider, and in your mind's eye, envision those you know on a casual basis, those in your neighborhood, those in your community, the person who serves you at places where you eat or get gas, maybe even folks in this congregation. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. And now in your mind's eye, consider those who are difficult to love. Maybe you even have a deep sense of disagreement or even hate for this person or people. Maybe this is a political figure. Maybe this is someone you've had a long, challenging relationship with. Hold them in your mind's eye. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. And now widen the circle even more and consider those in the whole world, those especially who may be suffering, and the plants and the earth and the rocks and the seas and the mountains. And expand your vision even more beyond this planet, beyond the solar system, to the stars and the infinite universe. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole. Every week, we gather in this place to witness each other's joys and sorrows. And you can share your personal milestones at this time during the week by writing them in the Joys and Sorrows book, normally near the candle lighting area. And Zoom friends, if you'd like, you can type your contributions into the chat and share with others on Zoom.
I don't, yeah. Did you set that up?
I didn't set
Okay.
that up.
Well, we won't be able to do that part
Okay.
today, sorry.
Unless somebody has it on their phone or right in front of us, probably not. Okay. So let me share with you some of the joys and concerns folks shared this morning. Joy and sorrow for prepping to leave home after 19 years. Comfort for Dalton and Stacy after the loss of their beloved dog. Support and prayers for sweet and funny James, who has been diagnosed with cancer of the esophagus. Gratitude for the nice day my little family had yesterday at Saheli Falls, and prayers for the extreme needs we have right now. And prayers for Sally O'Donnell's daughter, Colleen. She's receiving chemo for colon cancer. And we gather all of these concerns in our hearts and minds, and those spoken and unspoken, and let that be our prayer.
This morning's reading comes from an essay by Lonnie Guinier. She was a civil rights attorney. Her essay was titled Second Proms and Second Primaries, The Limits of Majority Rule. The essay's title derives from two specific incidents: a high school in Chicago where a minority of students felt compelled to hold a second alternative prom because the music they suggested be played kept getting outvoted by the student organizing committee. And then also a rural county in Arkansas whose runoff voting procedure requiring an outright majority winner in a primary rather than a mere plurality winner prevented Black voters an equal opportunity to elect candidates of their choice and exacerbated patterns of racially polarized voting. These seemingly disconnected incidents are both examples of problems Guinier sees with the idea that democracy should always equal majority rule. In the essay, she explores a possible alternative to our system that could create more proportional outcomes. She closes her essay with these words: "A vision of fairness and justice must begin to imagine a full and effective voice for disadvantaged minorities, a voice that is accountable to self-identified community interests, a voice that persuades, and a voice that is included in and resonates throughout the political process. That voice will not be achieved by majoritarian means or by enforced separation into winner-take-all racial districts. For in the end, democracy is not about rule by the powerful, even a powerful majority, nor is it about arbitrarily separating groups to create separate majorities in order to increase their share. Instead, the ideal of democracy promises a fair discussion among self-defined equals about how to achieve our common aspirations." Guinier's essay is just one source I have encountered through the years that have inspired in me an ongoing critical inquiry into democracy. What is it exactly? What conditions allow for its best operation? What would a fair discussion, in Guinier's words, look like? How might such a discussion resonate at the very core of our beings? These are not abstract intellectual questions disconnected from our everyday lives. The very course of our lives is a complicated fabric spun from the threads of just so many collective decision-making processes. What should we have for dinner tonight? Should we go to church this morning? Should we drive our car or ride our bikes to church? Democracy is really just a fancy word to describe the sum total of all such decisions and how those decisions got made. As the story that Ryan told this morning points out, this is an aspect of life present from a very early age. What should we play next? When I was first thinking about this morning's topic, I remembered an experience that my younger daughter had. She was very young at the time, maybe 5 or 6 years old. She was enrolled in a gymnastics class, which she enjoyed and thrived in. One small problem: at the end of each class, the teacher allowed the kids to have some free time for an activity that they all wanted to do. On the surface, this sounds like a great idea. Yeah, they got to vote. Woohoo, democracy! Unfortunately, my daughter was continually outvoted. The group always chose to play with hula hoops. My daughter could just not do it at all. It became a major source of frustration for her, so much so that she ended up quitting the class. It seemed intensely unfair to me as well. Like, couldn't 1 time out of 10 they maybe do something different that everyone could enjoy or that my daughter could also enjoy? Perhaps we take this automatic value of democracy for granted. In the book she was writing the year before her assassination in 2007, titled Reconciliation, Islam, Democracy in the West, Pakistani politician and former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto describes the near religious fervor that democracy has achieved in Western countries. This opens up a potential charge of hypocrisy, as Bhutto notes. The so-called incompatibility of Islam and democratic governance is used to divert attention from the sad history of Western political intervention in the Muslim world, which has been a major impediment to the growth of democracy in Islamic nations. I would be remiss not to mention at this point that Bhutto was herself not an uncontroversial figure in her life. Her own niece, Fatima Bhutto, described her as a puppet Democrat linked to the US government's neoconservative agenda, a sort of tool of Western democracy. Bhutto and her husband, Asif Ali Zardari, were both under near constant accusation and investigation of corrupt financial dealings. There are no unambiguous heroes to celebrate here. This is more of a problem-posing model of reflection. Bhutto challenges the idea that Western countries have a monopoly over democracy. She writes, "Something that I have always believed in and strongly endorse, that freedom and liberty are universal values that can be applied across cultures, societies, religions, ethnic groups, and individual national experiences. Democracy is not an inherently Western political value. It is a universal value. Liberty means as much to someone from Indonesia as it does to someone from Louisiana." I find her 2007 reference to Louisiana here somewhat ironic, given the move to now post the 10 Commandments in every Louisiana state school classroom. Bhutto notes that voting by itself is not enough because elections can easily devolve into a one-party authoritarian rule. You may remember that Saddam Hussein had elections, plenty of elections, but they didn't seem especially democratic in the full sense of the word. In her piece, Bhutto goes on to discuss some aspects of civil society that are needed to nurture a more democratic situation, such as an independent judiciary. I did want to touch briefly this morning on one structural problem with how elections are run here in the United States. Yes, I know I'm violating my own rule about no lectures. Sorry about that. So there are probably many such problems we could discuss. I mean, we've got a nearly 250-year-old system going here, and maybe there's some creaky cracks that need to be solved. And some of these include gerrymandered districts, an out-of-control and unaccountable Supreme Court seemingly intent on rewriting the Constitution, whatever the hell the Electoral College is, etc. But we don't have time to solve all the country's problems right now. The problem that I do want to focus on briefly is the voting system we use, sometimes called first past the post, where the larger electorate is divided up into smaller geographical districts. They are winners-take-all districts where the representative is the person who wins the most votes. We live, for example, in the 4th Congressional District here in Oregon. Majority rules, fair, right? This brings us back to where I started with Lonnie Guinier's critique. One of the problems with the first past the post voting system is that it can greatly distort and exaggerate the results of an election. Take the election this past Thursday in the United Kingdom, which uses a similar system to how we elect our House of Representatives. In terms of members of Parliament in the House of Commons, the Labour Party won an extraordinarily overwhelming victory. They won 411 seats out of a possible 650. On paper, this is one of their best results ever. If one looks, however, at the sheer number of votes cast for Labour Party candidates across the entire country, 9.7 million, this is actually one of the lowest popular vote totals for a winning party in Britain. With a vote share percentage of just 33.8%, it was actually the smallest of any majority government in British electoral history. Also, voter turnout was extremely low, so the total number of people that voted Labour is actually small. And so more people did not vote for Labour than voted for Labour. In fact, comparing the raw numbers to the 2019 general election, the Labour Party actually received fewer votes this time than they did in that election, 10.2 million in 2019 compared to 9.7 million this time. And that election resulted in one of the worst results for the Labour Party in its entire history. It's just that the Conservative Party did that much worse this time around. So it's all relative, right? You may be asking yourself, what do all these numbers and stuff have to do with church and the larger Unitarian Universalist faith tradition? I've been asking myself, what's the value of democracy within Unitarian Universalism as a whole, due to the revision made to the UUA's Article 2 section of its bylaws 2 weeks ago, after a 1.5-year-long process of review. The 7 or 8 principles had been replaced by 7 values. Do you know them yet? They spell out JETPIG, they're up there. Justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and and generosity, and also love is the centering value of all those that they all sort of rotate around. So where's democracy? I don't know. Let's see, where am I here? In the older Article 2, which is still a part of UUCE's bylaws, by the way, if and until we choose to change those, and we adopted the 8th principle a couple of years ago, the 5th principle read, Unitarian Universalist congregations affirm and promote the right of conscience in the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. On the surface, this commitment seems strangely absent, but reading more closely into the Article 2 revision, I'm heartened to see that democracy is still there, but you do have to sort of read the fine print and beyond the pretty swirly graphic that we just saw on the screen. Under the value of justice, for example, is slightly reworked language from the old 5th principle. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregation, our association, and society at large. When Bob and I were reading through the Article 2 revisions in preparation for this service, we also detected echoes of democratic thinking in the fine print under the new values of interdependence, equity, and my personal favorite, pluralism. To be honest, I've often been leery of the apparent striving for unanimous decisions in UU circles because it seems to me to not allow for this kind of pluralism. How do we incorporate difference in a way where people who vote against the majority decision feel okay about that? It's for this reason that I sometimes think that a more accurate personal label for myself is a differentialist rather than a Unitarian or a Universalist. Perhaps the solution to solving systemic problems with democracy is that there is no solution. A lack of closure, nothing that can get wrapped up in a neat, tidy bow, is an element of the kind of postmodern democracy discussed in the writings of William Connolly, who's skeptical of totalized meta-narratives of progress. I'm going to close my portion of this morning's service with words from his book, Identity/Difference. By fostering the experience of contingency and relationality and identity, democracy disturbs the closure of self-identity and sometimes provides a medium for modifying the terms of collective identity. This combination increases the chance that a larger variety of identities will be allowed to contend with one another on democratic terms. And now for something completely different. We're going to hold a brief impromptu snapped election of our own.
So we're gonna, there, am I on right here? Kat, can you bring this mic up? Thanks. So what we're gonna do is, we have two candidates for an official mascot for the UUCE. So our choices are either a dog or a cat, right? So here's what we're gonna do. With a show of hands or with a loud barking noise, how many of you want to vote for a dog as our official mascot? Okay. All right, now conversely.
And now, because cats rule and dogs drool, sorry, I had to throw some pro-cat propaganda in there. How many of you would you prefer a cat? Indicate with a show of hands or loud meowing sounds. Meow, meow, meow.
That looks like a pretty close decision. Well, so does this feel like a fair election? Does this seem like this is a fair process?
How did we decide on those two? Why not a lizard or a dolphin or a butterfly or something?
Or a jet pig?
Jet pig.
Well, and how many people realize the folly of this whole exercise and didn't vote, right? Or you voted twice.
Vote early, vote often.
There you go. There you go. Also, who decided who gets to vote in this? We've got people on Zoom. Are all the church members, present? Who decided who got to be a part of that process?
How might such a vote have been prepared better? Is there even a serious call among congregants to have a church mascot? Whose crazy idea was this anyway? This is a brief exercise to demonstrate that process does matter.
Yes. Thank you. So, this voting exercise also is a way for us to illustrate how messy democracy can be and why many people are attracted to the simplicity and supposed order that right-wing authoritarian leaders currently offer in a world challenged with complex problems like climate change, immigration, social and economic disparity, partisan division, and inequality. So let me begin my portion of this reflection on first acknowledging the inspiration and thoughtfulness that David has brought to the service today. A couple of months ago, David offered to the worship associates to lead this meeting, or this service on the topic of democracy, and I agreed to join the effort. And as we met over the course of several weeks, the relevance of this topic on national scale seems even more heightened given the progress or lack of progress on criminal and civil cases brought against a former president of the United States. And as we've heard, significant challenges and changes to legal precedent in the U.S. Supreme Court on things like abortion and environmental regulation, homelessness, and presidential immunity. So thank you, David, for bringing this topic to our attention in such a timely and relevant way. So though UUs, as members of a progressive, inclusive, and social justice-oriented religious tradition, may personally be involved in overt partisan activities, our reflections this morning are not about advocating for a particular partisan agenda. In fact, you could be Republican and be a member of this congregation, right? What I'm most interested in thinking about with you this morning is how our explicit Unitarian Universalist principles and values regarding democracy are integral to our individual and corporate identity, the way we make decisions, and what impact each of our voices can have in a democracy. When I think of the term democracy as a decision-making system, the notions of the inherent worth and dignity and equality of each person and how we are interconnected, these are the things that help us choose community actions. If in our congregation every person has equal status, if each one of us is imbued with worth and value, if each of our voices has the same right to be heard, then some type of democratic process makes sense. We don't have a king or a queen or a pope or a bishop or a priest who makes decisions for us. We voice our recommendations and concerns about our annual budget. We offer ideas and critique our programs and services offers. We elect leaders who represent us and manage our staff and our facilities. All of these matters in a UU congregation are done through democratic processes. In a UU congregation, there is a natural consequence when valuing each person's dignity and seeing respect for each person. When we hear the voice of the unique voice and honor our individual contributions, there is a byproduct. That natural consequence, that byproduct is love. It's love. When you hear me, when I hear you, when I value your unique self and individual contribution, when we endure the untidy process of democratic decision-making, when we respectfully disagree, we show each other love. And I remind you the words of the Unitarian Universalist Francis David, we do not need to think alike to love alike. We often define ourselves as a beloved community, a term Martin Luther King Jr. used in his vision for a more inclusive and just world where all people share in the earth's wealth. And in the proposed UU Article 2, which outlines an articulation of these values in our tradition, love is at the core. Therefore, even our democratic decision-making processes can lead us to the spiritual and relational endeavor of love. And there's one other element to acknowledge when love is a consequence of our decision-making, and that element is freedom. Buddhism gives us insight on the four elements of love, which are loving kindness, which we meditated on earlier, compassion, joy, and in the last, freedom. In the words of the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, in true love, you attain freedom. When you love, you bring freedom to the person you love. If the opposite is true, it is not true love. You must love in such a way that the person you love feels free, not only outside, but also on the inside. And on an aside, my wife and I attended a wedding several years ago, and at the reception before the wedding, the bride shared this reading. And in that moment, with my wife sitting next to me, I thought, I feel free. I'm really loved. And I looked at my wife and I said, oh, I'm sorry, honey. You must not feel very free. I love you, but I know you don't feel very free sometimes by the way I act. And so since that time, I've often joked about helping her to feel more free. UU values and principles are not exclusively for the benefit of individual members and congregations. Our values call us to action, to be voices which promote social justice and peace in our country and our world, which frequently lacks both. When we use our voices in such a way, we align ourselves with those who stood against oppression, violence, racism, genocide, and greed. And one voice that speaks to me that harkens back to Frederick Douglass, the abolitionist, who in 1852 gave one of his most renowned speeches to the ladies of the Rochester Anti-Slavery Sewing Society. And his speech was, "What to the slave is the 4th of July?" How relevant as we celebrate the 4th. And here's an excerpt from his speech. "What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which lie is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, a boasted liberty, an unholy license. Your national greatness, swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than the people of the United States at this very hour." It was in 1852. And oftentimes in the example of Frederick Douglass, speaking truth to power can raise conflicting responses, revulsion at the depravity of our actions, and on the other side, hopefulness in the ability of the human spirit to overcome the worst of our treatment of each other. As a nation, we have both legacies, moments when we have oppressed and destroyed the weak, and moments when we have struggled together with true love to make each other free. So today we leave you with some questions. How will you be engaged in loving our world so that it may be free? How will you use your voice to challenge those who would undermine democratic processes near and far? What actions can you take to preserve democracy for your sake and for that of others and for our country? And so Dave and I we want to leave you this morning with a list of concrete actions that you can take to promote democratic values.
Many of you helped contribute to this list via a thread of conversation that developed on the UU Share email listserv. Some ideas included
writing postcards to swing state voters organized by various organizations such as Activate America,
participating in UUCE's own monthly social justice faith and action group, the folks with the Yellow Love t-shirts,
join an organization such as Braver Angels, a cross-partisan volunteer-led movement to bridge partisan divides for the good of our democratic republic through engaged conversations.
It could even be something more informal and personal, such as experimenting with hosting regular democratic family meetings in your own household. The full list of ideas is available as a hyperlinked document at the end of the digital order of service, which you can access through the QR codes, along with other resources on today's topic. I can do that part. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. As you go, please take a few minutes to greet your neighbors, especially those you don't know yet. Reminder to come back for an afternoon of Encore's benefit concert at 3 p.m.